This crane is capable of lifting hundreds of tons of cargo, a massive machine that once played an important role in countless construction sites and ports over many years. But just by looking at the peeling paint, rust-covered metal surfaces and thick layers of oil stains covering its body, it is easy to see that this machine has endured an extremely harsh working life. According to the mechanic inspecting it, the load-bearing structure responsible for keeping the entire crane balanced has developed numerous cracks of different sizes. What is even more concerning is that this area had already been repaired many times before. Layers of steel plates stacked on top of each other along with a welding mark clearly show that this crane has been brought back to life repeatedly just to keep working. For a heavy-duty crane like this, the load-bearing frame is the most critical part of the entire machine. It must support enormous amounts of weight every time the crane arm lifts cargo into the air. Even a small crack appearing in the wrong position could cause the entire structure to lose stability at any moment. Yet despite the danger, this machine still has to operate every single day because the owner simply has no other choice. In many developed countries, machines in such severe condition would most likely be replaced or permanently retired. Workplace safety regulations there are extremely strict, especially for equipment designed to lift massive loads. A single crack appearing in a structural frame could be enough to shut the machine down forever. However, in many developing countries, especially in places where economic conditions are still difficult, replacing a crane like this is nearly impossible. The value of these machines is enormous, sometimes reaching millions of dollars. For many small business owners and workshop operators, repair work is the only way to continue operating and making a living. That is why small mechanical workshops like this continue to exist day after day. Even without modern equipment or proper working conditions, they remain the places where old machines are brought in for another chance at life. After carefully examining the cracked area, the mechanic begins preparing the repair tools. On the ground covered in metal dust and grease, old welding machines and large gas cylinders are already prepared for operation. The first step is removing all the old reinforcement plates that had been welded on during previous repairs. The worker uses an extremely high temperature flame created by a mixture of gas and oxygen to cut through the thick steel. Only seconds after the flame touches the metal, bright red sparks begin flying violently in every direction. The old welds slowly melt away and separate from the steel surface. The sound of the cutting torch echoes continuously through the workshop, loud and intense. Every cut must be performed carefully to avoid causing further damage to the structure underneath. A single mistake or a cut that goes too deep could make the crack spread even further. Once most of the old steel has been removed, the workers begin using hammers and simple hand tools to pry the heavy plate away. The task requires a great deal of physical strength because the layers of metal have been tightly fused together after years of carrying massive loads. Finally, the old steel plate is removed, exposing the actual damaged structure underneath. Long cracks can now be clearly seen across the surface of the metal. Some areas even show signs of deformation caused by years of extreme pressure. Looking at these cracks, it becomes easy to understand just how hard this machine has worked throughout its lifetime. The workers do not rush into welding immediately. First, they need to force the cracked edges tightly back together to eliminate any gaps inside the future weld. At this moment, a very familiar tool commonly used in small metal workshops is brought out, a manual pressing tool. Although simple in design, this tool is incredibly effective. Using years of experience, the mechanic applies force carefully to push the separated metal edges back into alignment. Heavy metallic banging echoes throughout the narrow workshop space with every strike. The sound is not rushed or chaotic. It is slow, steady, and controlled. Every movement is guided by the mechanic's instinct and experience, something no technical drawing or machine can fully replace. Sweat begins soaking through their clothes under the unbearable heat coming from both the metal and the welding flame. Yet nobody stops working. They understand that if this structure is not repaired properly, the crane could crack again after only a short period of operation. Once the cracked edges are finally pressed tightly together, the restoration welding process begins. Brilliant electric arcs flash continuously through the thick white smoke. Molten metal slowly fills the damaged gaps, forming long new welds across the steel surface. This work can continue for many hours without stopping. With machines this old, nobody can guarantee how long the repair will last. It may continue working for several more years, or the cracks could reappear again within only a few months in another location. Even so, for the people working here, the most important thing is keeping the crane operational, because behind this old machine lies not only steel and grease, but also jobs, income, and the livelihoods of many people. In places where life is still difficult, people cannot simply throw away a machine because it has grown old. Instead, they repair it, reinforce it, and continue using it until the very last limit. And mechanics like these are the silent workers who keep these giant machines alive for as long as possible. There are no modern machines assisting this process, nor any advanced technology like the kind found in large industrial factories. Almost the entire repair process depends completely on real-world experience and the rough, weathered hands of the workers who have spent years doing this kind of heavy mechanical work. The mechanic bends down low, carefully examining every small crack on the metal surface before beginning the first welding points. Bright electric arcs flash continuously inside the dark and narrow workshop. The steady crackling sound of welding echoes through the air, mixed with the strong burnt metal smell that is so familiar in this trade, making the entire space feel hotter and more suffocating than ever. The worker moves along each weld very slowly but with incredible precision and confidence. They understand clearly that this is not just an ordinary metal object, but the main structural frame of a crane capable of lifting hundreds of tons. If even a single weld fails, the consequence later could be extremely serious, and layers of molten metal slowly begin to fuse together. The white cracks that were once clearly visible gradually disappear beneath thick and solid weld lines. The mechanic never rushes the process. After finishing each section, they stop to observe carefully, change viewing angles, and inspect the weld penetration using nothing but practical experience. Some areas must be welded repeatedly several times just to ensure enough strength and durability for future heavy loads. After completing the first damaged section, the workers move on to the next area. Once again, the manual pressing tool is brought in to force the steel edges tightly back together before the welding continues. Heavy metallic banging echoes throughout the hot workshop, making it feel as though the entire building shakes with every powerful strike. Each time the steel edges are pressed together, the massive crane body vibrates slightly from the force. While working, the mechanic constantly checks the alignment of the load-bearing frame. They know that even the deviation of only a few millimeters could seriously affect the entire structural system once the crane returns to operation. For workers who have spent decades in heavy mechanical repair, modern measuring equipment is often unnecessary. Simply by looking with their eyes and feeling with their hand, they can estimate the warping or deformation of the steel frame after years of carrying enormous load. That level of skill comes from years of sweat, time and hard labor in an extremely dangerous environment. Once everything is temporarily aligned, the welding arc bursts to life again. Bright red sparks explode everywhere like fireworks in broad daylight. Thick white smoke from the molten metal slowly fills the workshop. Behind an old welding mess, the mechanic patiently continues laying long weld lines along the tightly pressed steel edges. After all the welding is finally completed, another worker approaches carrying a large grinding machine. The loud engine noise instantly breaks the heavy silence inside the workshop. The grinding disc spins at extremely high speed, throwing long streams of sparks violently across the ground. The worker carefully smooths down each excess weld layer on the steel surface. This process not only makes the repair look cleaner, but also helps inspect the consistency of the reinforced area. If even a tiny hole or gap is discovered, additional welding is immediately performed. Fine metal dust slowly begins covering the workers' clothes and faces. Sweat mixes with iron dust, creating dark stains across their skin, yet nobody complains or stops to rest for long. For them, this has become an ordinary routine repeated almost every single day. After many continuous hours of repair work, the load-bearing frame is finally restored. Looking at the finished result, the old cracks have almost completely disappeared beneath layers of new steel and thick, overlapping welds. It may not look as perfect as parts manufactured in modern factories, but it is the product of real experience, skill and hard labor. With this kind of experienced manual repair work, the massive crane may continue operating for several more years before eventually needing complete replacement. And in places where life is still difficult, sometimes that alone is more than enough to help people continue making a living. And what about you? What do you think about the craftsmanship and experience of these workers? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. For now, goodbye and see you again in the next video.